Okay, I want to take a look at using silica gel to dry a green turned bowl. And I've got these two. This one is wet, and this one's dry. And you can kind of see the difference in color between them. And these were actually like this in the tree, in the log. And so the two bowls are out of the same wood, out of the same log, just next to each other in there. And so I did that because the process takes a while, and I wanted you to see a dry one and not have to wait a day. So we're going to put this in and actually show you how to do the process to dry this bowl and all the steps and everything that's involved there. So to begin with, we have, again, this is the 10-pound size of desiccant that we have here. We do sell it in a 20-pound, but this is the 10-pound size, so that's what we're dealing with on this one. And I'm going to take this bowl, but there's one other thing that I need. I need some kind of container that will hold this, because if I just put the bowl in the bag and pour desiccant over it, the desiccant runs to the corners, and when you set it down, it runs around and it'll leave part of the bowl exposed around the top edges. And there are some folks that have tried this on forums and things that I've read about, that they say, well, it works sometimes and sometimes it doesn't. And we think we've got that all figured out. The bowl has to have desiccant around all sides, outside, inside, and at least an inch of it in depth all around. So if I were to just pour desiccant inside this bowl, it'll pull moisture out of the inside of the bowl, but it won't pull it out of the outside evenly, and it'll cause it to crack and check. The big deal here is, if you do this right, it dries it. A bowl this size, 24 hours will be sufficient almost always, and it doesn't check. It just simply, it will warp, just like wood does when it dries anytime, but it won't check. That's the big deal. But if I put it in and just set it down in and don't fill the inside, it'll check every time. It'll cause cracks in it because it's not drying evenly. So it needs to be completely immersed. So what I'm going to do is take the bag now and just slip it down in this box. And you could use a bucket, anything that'll just help hold this thing. So we're just going to put the bag in there like that, and I'm going to set the bowl down in here. And then I'm going to take the desiccant and start pouring it in there. And I won't need all of this. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. I think I have enough. I'll shift it around down there now and we'll see how this works. Okay, the bowl is sitting in it, resting on it, and the inside of the bowl is full. And we'll get a shot so you can see that here and take a look at that. Now, as you can see, the bowl is resting in there and it's full of desiccant, the silica gel, but it's not completely immersed and buried in it. So now I'm going to pour more in and get it so that the bowl is completely covered. And in this case, I'm just putting the whole 10 pounds in. And now the bowl is completely covered, and all you see is silica gel when you look down in there. Then what you have to do is seal this bag up, and we give you a zip tie. And I know that's not a big deal, but these zip ties actually have a little release on them, so you can use it over and over again. But you need to seal this up. That's real important, that you seal the bag shut. If you don't seal it, it's going to pull moisture out of the air, and it may not dry the bowl completely. And if you have any silica left in the original bag, if you only use part of it, it's a small piece, you've got to seal it back up as soon as you're through pouring it. It's pulling moisture out of the air all the time. So you've got to make sure that you seal things up. That's real important. And covering the bowl completely is really important. You need to do that. Okay, we've got the bowl in the silica gel now, completely covered up. And again, it's about a 24-hour process. The moisture content of the wood when you turned it is going to obviously have some effect on this. How thick you leave the wall. We recommend no thicker than an inch, maybe an inch and an eighth. If you get thicker than that, the wood does tend to want to crack then, just because it's pulling the moisture out pretty quickly. But following those things, in 24 hours, you're going to end up with a bowl like this that is dry. And if you look closely, you can see it's a little longer than it is wide because it has warped a little across the grain. It's shrunk. And we can talk about moisture content, but what we've found trying different moisture meters, we get different readings with different meters. They give you a good range, an idea, but they aren't that accurate. I can put one on here with pins that penetrate and tell me that I'm at 10% or 8%, and put another one that scans the surface and tells me that I'm 6%, and I can get another pin by a different manufacturer that'll tell me another measurement. So here's what we've found that absolutely works. Weigh the bowl before you put it in. Little kitchen scale is a great way to do that. And then weigh it when you take it out in 24 hours. And if you really want to be really careful about it, you can put it back in for 12 hours or so and take it back out. When it quits losing weight, that's as much moisture as you're going to pull. But here's what we've found. If the bowl's an inch or less thick and you have it completely covered well, in 24 hours, under normal circumstances, again, it doesn't mean that the log was found floating in a river that you turned your bowl out of. It is just a blank that you used. In 24 hours, it will lose about 30% in weight. And what we have found is it may not be at 6% like it came out of a dry kill at that point, but it's dry enough to return and finish, and it won't warp further or move anymore. So that 30% is a pretty good number. And, so that's pretty easy to do. If it was 200 grams when it went in, it's going to be like around 140 when it comes out. That's about 60% or 30% loss in weight. So that's a real good average. That's worked real well for us. We've done a lot of bowls in this. Been messing with this for over a year, trying all kinds of things to figure out what works and what doesn't. And the big thing is having it really covered completely with the silica, and give it 24 hours and you'll probably be really happy. If the piece comes out and it hasn't lost that 30%, then I'd put it back in for 12 or 24 hours. It's not going to hurt it to leave it an extra day. But usually 24 hours is it. So we've gone to green bowl and in 24 hours of dry bowl that you can finish, instead of 6 to 8 months drying them slowly, in a dark corner of the basement. Now I want to take a look here. We'll move over and look at the oven and how you put this in there when it has gotten wet and what you want to do to dry the silica. Okay, here's an example of the silica. Once it has actually absorbed water, it turns very pink, and it's blue or even purple when it's dry. So what we can do now to dry this, and we like this oven, it's not all that important, but this is actually a tabletop, countertop, convection oven. And the convection part really helps because it has a fan that circulates air and it helps to pull that moisture out of the pieces. So what you do is you just put the silica right in here, and you can, obviously we'd have a lot more if we'd done a big bowl and all that, but in this case you put it in, close this up, and just turn your oven on. Now here's the thing. There's a critical temperature here. You want to heat it around 250 degrees. If you go to 275, that's the upper limit. But here's the problem. If you go much above that, 280, 285, it will dry the silica, but it also begins to melt the outside surface what it does is close the pores, so it can't take moisture in as readily as it does when it's not overheated. So overheating it makes the silica lose capacity to hold moisture. So we say don't even get near 275 because that's the critical. 250 works really well. Now, how long does it take? It depends on how wet it is and how much you put in. In this particular oven, we can put a double layer in. Well, it takes quite a bit longer. If I put 2 pans full in there, it takes a while. So it depends on how wet it's gotten, how much you put in. Don't put it in more than about 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch thick in the tray. Too deep, again, takes a long time and it doesn't get dry in the middle. Convection oven helps a lot. Probably 1 hour to 1 hour and a half to dry a full tray in there. But that's the process. Can you use your kitchen oven? You can, but it may have a slight odor. The odor isn't from the silica, it's from the moisture that you've pulled out of the wood. So if the wood smelled a little, the moisture is going to have that odor, so that's why we like these countertop ovens, not your kitchen oven. And you don't want to use any kind of dish or pan that's going to be used for food preparation. Just dedicate some stuff. That's why I've got these that are just lined with foil, just made out of some sheet metal stuff that fit in there very nicely and do the job. Don't intermix the two. The indicator in this, if you ate it, can be harmful. So, we're telling you don't eat the silica gel. Just using it as we've used it, it's not harmful at all, but it can be if you ingest any of that. And so we wouldn't want you to be contaminating your food prep dishware or anything that you're using in that way. So keep those separate, 250 degrees. Here, I've got the bag. I have to seal this back up. While I'm talking, it's pulling moisture out of the air. Everything needs to stay sealed. When you're doing the bowl, seal it. When you're storing it, keep it sealed. It'll last forever as long as you keep it sealed up. And again, you can regenerate it with just a small oven, 250 degrees. This lets you turn bowls quickly, not the bowl quickly, but return it quickly because you only have to wait about 24 hours. You can do pen parts. You can do, if you are doing knife handles, you can do those and dry them quickly. There's no end to the stuff. It works on just boards as long as they're not more than 1 inch, maybe 1 1/8 thick. It's a great idea here that we've just kind of stumbled across and figured out how to make it work. Again, if you're doing a flat board, you've got to make sure that there's enough gel to cover both sides of that piece of wood when it's laying flat and at least 1 inch thick. And if you do all that, we've had great results with almost no problems with checking at all.